what's happening? Robert Kennedy III here, RK3. That's me, and we are with
Christopher Bartley. That's you. I'm gonna work. I'm gonna get it. It's episode 8. It's about that time.
Yeah, episode 8, the Storytellers show. We're so glad that you're back with us. We've been having so much fun over the last 8 weeks, just exploring all of the different tidbits about storytelling, the types of stories you should tell in specific situations, all of the different assets, all of the different journeys, all of the different models that stories can take on. And so we're going to talk about storytelling today a little bit, but we're going to do it a little bit differently because we're going to talk about how it shows up in the real workspace. So hold on one second. Oh, I've got my monitors. I've got my stuff playing loudly in the background here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good deal. Yeah. So what's happening, man? What's new in your world? What's happening? What's the latest for you?
You know, it's really tied to what we're going to be talking about today. So,
Yes.
as you know, still in startup mode and figuring out the niche in storytelling as far as internal, like teams, not just brand messaging for, healthcare entities, but how does that work within an organization, leaders, mobilization, connecting, and all of that. And came across an article, man. Came across an article that Harvard Business Review article that says what to do if your career is stalled and you don't know why. And long story short, 64% of the reasons why top players, we're talking about A players, don't make it to the C-level suite is because of executive presence, communication style. Yeah. So that's storytelling, man. That is, and so, but anyway, that being said, it was for me, one of the seminal resources or references that I'll be using as I dig deeper into how does the strategic asset of storytelling affect the healthcare workplace. So that's what's going on my end, man.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're going to really approach today is the fact that, number one, stories are shared whether you open your mouth or not, right?
Absolutely.
And then I think over the last year, we've had this pandemic, we've had to shift how we show up quite a bit. Right. So, we've got the people, they show up on a Zoom meeting or on a call and you hear the thing about business on top, party on the bottom, right? You're wearing a jacket and a tie, but then you've got pajama shorts and barefoot on the bottom. And
don't ask me about my bottom. Rob, don't do it.
Yeah. So the question is here, how does a storyteller, how does a leader, how does an executive show up with executive presence? How do they continue to tell that story even in the virtual space? Is it different? Are there things that they need to consider differently? What do we do? So before we even dive into that, if you're on, here's what I want you to do. I want you to share the show with others. If you believe that somebody else is going to be benefited by watching our show today, we're going to be talking about storytelling and executive presence. If you believe that's the case, go ahead and share this, invite people, tag them either on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on the YouTube channel, RK3TV. Make sure that you subscribe there. Go to rk3tv.live/subscribe so that you can get notified every time this show goes live. So we're going to be talking about that today. So let's do this thing, man. Tell me a little bit about this article that you read and why this topic became important for you today.
So Elena Botello, Katie Craig, they have done over 2,000. So they've assessed over 2,000 CEOs and over 18,000 C-suite leaders since 95, right? So there's some credibility there. And what they've noticed is this factor called the panda. It's these innocent factors that don't seem like it's such a big deal, but just like a panda looks cute on the outside, they have the bite of a jaguar. And this is there. So 36%, when they're talking about like executive presence, one of the things, for instance, that they mentioned was that there could be a story where, there are two execs that are talking, and this is actually a real story, and they just kind of, anonymized everyone. And they said, well, what about Tom? Tom seems like a great fit for this position. And then one of them says, yeah, but he has body odor. And right. And we would think that that's not like, that's something that you would probably see on reality TV or something like that, but it happens in real life where they will actually have discussions whether or not somebody can take a C-level position because of what would seem like minor things, but for the culture and for the context. So let's talk about context in storytelling. It doesn't fit that particular work environment. And I think that that's important there. If I want to just pause there and say, not every C-level executive, if we're talking about executive presence, one of the biggest things is obviously how you dress needs to have, right now, you're wearing a polo, right? Or needs to have a button-up shirt. I'm coming from startup world where most of the shirts that we wear, I think I've got a ClickFunnels one on right here, right? Funnel, like wearing WeWork or whatever. You're not coming dressed up, so to speak, but it really depends. It depends on the kind of work and the kind of investors or people that you're reaching out to. So it really does matter when you first start off with the context. What's my work environment? What's the culture? And how do I present myself before even opening my mouth? But I will tell you this, before you open your mouth, body odor should just be something that should just be, it tells a story regardless about hygiene.
Yeah. So you're saying pretty much if I am in the startup world, showing up in a suit and tie on the first day, or even doing that regularly, what does that do to my credibility within that world? Dive a little bit deeper into that if you can.
Yeah. Okay. So what I do want to do is demystify that when you hear startup and then you think of Silicon Valley, it's people in hoodies, t-shirt, and the jeans, and they don't really dress up. They just come, they're working in their garage. And so like you said, business on top and what was it? At the
party
bottom,
on the bottom, business party on top, party on the bottom.
They party on top and party on the bottom for the startup world. No. That's not what I am saying. However, once again, depending on the culture that you're coming into, like the one that I was in, there was really nobody that I could think of that was wearing consistently, a jacket and a button up and maybe a tie, unless they were like in the fintech space.
Right.
Where they were downtown and they were meeting with bankers or then it would make sense. But for the most part, we're all coming together in a culture to actually figure out how's the business going to work. Right. And it doesn't take you dressing up. Well, for some people it does, but it doesn't take you having to do that. So your presence might come off as what's the word? I'm trying to be kind here, Rob.
Go for it.
Little stush. Little bourgeoisie. You're kind of a little bit separate, or you are elitist. And the reason why that works is because it ties into the second factor. This is one of the factors that people think they have to do when they are an executive. And here it is. This article talked about using ivory tower language. So So this is communication, right? But you're not telling a story. What you're doing is you're using words that are just so fluffy, and instead of using a simple word such as there's a contrast between this idea and the other, you just want to do the most and say, well, there's a juxtapositional dichotomy. Like you don't have to do that. Stop. And they said that one of the reasons why we're talking about top players now, A players don't make it to that level is because they think that as you get to that level, you need to sound a little bit more aloof from, or more scholarly versus colloquial. Like using down-to-earth language for people who you're trying to lead to understand. So that was just another one there. Well, so it can kind of tie in.
It's not just that people think it, they are told these things. I remember my very first supervisory position that I was interviewing for. And I went through the interview and I was just joining this company. It wasn't a company where I kind of worked my way up. I had come from another organization and I was applying for a supervisory position. In the interview, as I was going through the interview later on, I was getting the sense that they were enamored with me, that they liked me. And as we got through the end of the interview, one of the things that one of the interviewing managers said was, remember that in this position, you can't be friends with the staff. Remember that in this position, you can't be buddy with the staff. So they were already telling me from the interview time that I needed to be here and I needed to establish myself as being here, and the staff and everybody else was below that level. And so the mindset that I had going, and I found out a little bit later on what a division this caused. It caused, like a Grand Canyon. I'm on the left side, they're on the right side. I found out later that it caused that. And man, I wish that I had been able to establish myself differently from the beginning. And that was bad leadership. That was terrible leadership that was taught and implied and shared with me right from the beginning.
Right. And that's the key with what we're talking about today. It's not the stories that you are overtly saying as much as it is the communication that is being conveyed, in which the people now that you are trying to lead, or the individuals that you are supervising, or even just your colleagues, are making up their own narrative about you. Here was another one. Another one was, there's this person who's a workaholic, but they were so entrenched in their own personal success that their peers felt as if they weren't really looking for a team win as much as they were trying to be the top person. Wow. And that prevented them also from being invited into the C-suite. So once again, it wasn't them sharing stories that, they were a negative Nancy or a downer Derek. No, it wasn't any of that. It was even just the work ethic with the intention of, I'm going to make it to the top with or without you. And at the C level, that doesn't work, because then what that translates to for individuals who are considering you as a candidate is like, you probably are going to be doing that at the helm of the ship as well.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't want to have to deal with. So there are a few other ones. Here's another one. So there's this guy, I think his name was Jim, another example. I'm probably messing up these names. That's okay.
Nobody else knows. It's just you and me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Once again, top player, but his problem was he conveyed himself as too meek, too humble. So he came off as a junior in his position when he was an expert. He was really a senior at a senior level, but he almost had this, and I don't want to call it false humility, but there are individuals who, for whatever reason, and let's not say introvert versus extrovert, it's not even that. There are just nonverbal cues that they give that makes it seem as if they're unsure about what they're doing, even though they're really sharp. Yeah. And so once again, they weren't able to make it to that level until they were getting some training as far as how do I communicate and how do I non-verbally express myself so that when people see me, they don't see me as someone who isn't sure about the position that they're in or the decisions that they're making. And so here's a great example of just like how to fix that. One of the things is speaking with conviction. Oftentimes there are people who may not want to step on other people's toes with their expertise. And so they say, they try to be too diplomatic. If it were me, I think, and this is just a suggestion. I just, they do this, I think, and perhaps we could. So they use those probably, possibly, versus being very decisive in what they're trying to say and get straight to the point. That is a story that you're telling other people.
Yeah, let me share two examples. So number one is something that I learned a few years ago, and this is something simple. If you're trying to increase your executive presence, if you're trying to increase your authority in some ways, and when I say authority, I'm not talking about authoritarianism. I'm talking about being in a position where other people see you as in a position of influence. Right. If you're trying to increase those, your language is crucial and important as well. So one thing that I learned, something as simple as, let's say that you have a meeting set and everybody's at the meeting and you come just a little bit late to the meeting. One of the things that we say typically is, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. Oh, I'm so sorry for this. And what you learn is that executive presence involves acknowledging your faux pas or acknowledging your fall down or your breakdown, but it also involves still placing yourself verbally and communicatively in a position of still pushing forward as the leader. So instead of saying, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late, it's, you know what, thank you guys so much for waiting for me while I dealt with blah, 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 blah. Let's proceed.
Yeah. Let's proceed. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You know, it takes the not the responsibility, but the tension or the pressure out of the hands of the people who you are trying to lead. And
Right.
you in a sense kind of, you don't leave it up to them to choose whether or not it's acceptable. And this is probably tough to say, but acceptable whether or not he was like, well, you know, as a leader, there's some things that I needed to deal with, but now that I'm here, let's get on with the business. Kind of you know, makes it. So it's a shift in focus, which is very, I like that.
And I think it's the thank you that's inside of that. It's not so much because a lot of times when somebody's late, you're already thinking, oh my gosh, this person's late. Oh my gosh, I've got other things to do. And so when you come and you say, I'm so sorry, it kind of puts you in a position or in a place of, oh my gosh, you know, you kind of release some of the confidence, you release some of the authority, you release. And there's this great book by a lady named Carolyn Goiter called Gravitas, right? And Gravitas is about it's one of the things that she even talks about in this book is when you're in a meeting, don't be so anxious to answer and jump ahead. Almost wait, let other people jump ahead, and then be one of the last people to speak. Because it's like these things. So here's what that does. It allows you to assimilate all of the other thoughts, ideas. You can be observant. You're hearing all of the different perspectives. And now when you speak, you're able to synthesize all of that and say, have we considered blah, 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 blah. So when you speak first, you're speaking out of passion, you're speaking out of energy, you're speaking out of excitement, but you also don't have buy-in. You don't have information from the space to then know that what you say is going to either meet or not meet the needs of the people in the room or how they'll gravitate to that statement. So when you speak at the end or when you speak last, now everybody, it's almost like you're Yoda at this point, right? It's almost like there's this level of wisdom because you have now synthesized all of this great stuff and you're able to say, hey, have we considered X, Y, and Z for this? Now everybody's looking and they say, oh, okay. So that's a different level of presence. That's authority. That is wisdom. That's kind of like that's like you got the gray in your beard right now.
And you know what, Rob, I would sandwich that between what happens at the end, especially for when you do need to be the synthesizer and really and facilitators do this very well because they know how to connect people's ideas so that when they're even coming up with this constructed meaning, you're able to help other people feel like they contributed to the insight that you're about to drop, which is great. But in the beginning, so let me back up. For those of you that are like, well, if everybody has this executive presence and everybody waits, well, then it'll just be a quiet room until somebody breaks the ice. No, trust me. There's always going to be an eager beaver in the room who's kind of like, I think. But here's the thing. I would sandwich the ending with also the beginning, where as a leader, especially in creative or brainstorming sessions, you just might have to be the one to break the ice, but then back away, So to be willing to say, okay, let's just put this idea out there. And how about we da-da-da-da-da-da? And then from there, you back up. And then, like you said, you take that back seat, you listen, you assess, synthesize, and then you can come in once the ice has been broken. So it really is an art. More than just a science, it is an art to be able to know when to insert yourself or how to assert yourself in particular situations. But I like what you said about the gravitas, beginning with the thank you. You had one more example. Though.
I forgot it. I forgot it.
Guys, it's another one that works? Smiling. Like sometimes we think it has to be so huge, but actually smiling makes a
Yeah.
big difference when it comes to executive presence.
Yeah.
It does increase a level of confidence about yourself. And not only that, but eye contact. Rob,
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about eye contact when it deals with the work from home culture
Yeah.
and the virtual space. Am I supposed to be looking at the camera every single time, or do I look at you like I'm doing right now because I want to see your expressions as I'm talking to see whether or not 90% of this is verbal? How can I see that if for most of us the camera forces our eyes to look at that little small dot versus what you're reacting to as I'm saying it online? Take us through that. Like, what does that look like for a virtual executive presence, or even just assessing, reading people?
Well, you're going to be in a position always of observing or speaking. So if I am speaking, then I want to be focused on the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I'm listening, then no, I don't want to be looking down at my phone or some other things. But there is a little bit of leeway to kind of look left, right, diagonal down a little bit. And so here's one of the things that I do is let's talk about camera positioning for just a moment. So a lot of people, if you're speaking on your laptop, right? If you're speaking on your laptop, oops, wrong button. Okay. If you're speaking on your laptop, then your laptop camera is typically at the top of the screen. So if I'm going to hold up my iPad here and just so that I can demonstrate. So typically, a lot of times your iPad camera is up here somewhere, or your laptop camera is up here. And then you're looking at everybody else down here, right? So there are two things that you can do with regard to that. You can raise the level of your laptop so that the camera is more eye level. And what I tend to do is not just have it at eye level. I tend to have it just a bit above eye level. So if I hold my hand out straight, right? I am holding my hand directly out in front of me. Let me raise my hand just a little bit. This is eye level right here. I'm like right in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
My camera is right about here. Do you see that? It's like right at the center of the screen right now. Although I've raised my hand from eye level about 15 degrees or so. So that does two things. It allows me to not just look down or look straight across. It allows me to look up slightly. And that also forces me to open my eyes just a bit wider because I'm looking up. So now the eye contact is just a bit more pronounced, right? If I had bags underneath my eyes or whatever, because I'm looking upwards, those become less pronounced. Not up like up in the roof or anything, but maybe 5 to 10 degrees above where your eyes are. And that provides that's a subtle difference that provides a little bit more connectivity with regard to eye contact. And so that is one thing. Let me actually share something with you. I don't know if I can do this really quick because we didn't really plan to do this, but that's okay.
That's why I love this show.
I'm going to show my camera here. Let me see if we can do this. All right. So I'm going to show my camera. All right. So this is kind of like behind the scenes stuff here. So if you you see my screen here. Right. But you can kind of see my camera right above that. I don't know if you see that little screen to the right of my camera.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So that is a little LCD screen that flips out from my camera so that I can look at my lens, but I'm also seeing
yourself, like the frame
myself,
of where you're in.
Yeah. So I'm also seeing myself, and it kind of helps me look like I'm looking at the camera as well. I mean, it's just slightly to the right, but it's close enough that I'm looking at the camera. So I'm seeing myself in some way. So I'm not, I don't look distracted. And so as we talk about eye contact, as we talk about presence, those are some things subtle things. And we're in this online space.
Yep.
Right. We're in this online space where we don't have the luxury of the large room view. We don't have the luxury of some of the energy. We don't have the luxury of seeing all the time the immediate response of the immediate visual response of your audience. And so you as a leader, you as an executive, you as a supervisor, you as somebody in C-suite or in an executive or a position of influence have to be more intentional and cognizant about your connection with your audience. So what story are you telling? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are they feeling when you transmit information to them?
Absolutely. One of the last ones, and I know we were talking about nonverbal, and it was kind of mixed with a little, right, communication style and verbal.
Yeah.
One of the last ones is using I versus we language.
Ooh, yeah.
So once again, the individuals who were more focused on talking about their accomplishments, especially if it was in a team effort, like what they did, they were more so looked over, or it was more questionable, as opposed to the individual who looked at the team when we as a group were able to XYZ, with Susan's ability to whatever, and John's ability to, and so, because once again, the C-level suite, the C-level position as the executive, the majority of your role is to inspire, to mobilize, and to strategize, right? You are now dealing or managing or directing with individuals who really are the direct reports, the people who are the executors, so to speak, right? Now, is there execution happening at the C-level? Of course, but there's at some point where, even in this communication style, where you realize it's, if you're still using a lot of I language, then from an executive standpoint, and once again, culture, from an executive standpoint, you probably aren't, even as a top player, aren't going to be the best fit for being a C-level, C-level player. Anyway, that being said, I know we only got like three minutes left. Wow, my takeaway would be, even if we were to look at it through the storytelling framework lens, once again, context. Not every context or not every work environment, even if it's a work from home, requires you to dress up in formal wear, right? Formal business wear. So you got to understand, and some do, many actually still do, where, you do have business on the top, party on the bottom, that would be one. But then look at the character. Remember, you are still the person in that story. But here's the caveat. Even if we were to look at the conflict and the problem that you're trying to solve, in this case, the problem, so to speak, would be, how do I win over the I don't want to say affection, but maybe the favor of those who might be considering me, as I'm a top or an A player, for another role or for promotion. What do I need to do in order for that to be to solve that? And you might be surprised. It's probably the pandas, the things that don't seem that deep to you, but are super critical to the people who are above you, who are saying, if he could only just blank, 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 if she could only just, then the story would be, because your company is trying to tell a story too. And you are a part of that narrative. And the way that you convey yourself, especially non-verbally, makes a huge difference in whether or not you get that position or not.
Awesome. And then when you do begin to express yourself verbally, one of the things that I share with people as I do public speaking coaching sometimes is simply embrace silence. A lot of the reason that we say filler words, is because we are scared of silence.
I'm still
gravitas. Executive presence embraces silence. Sometimes you can say something and you can just drop it and leave it just for a second and let it breathe and let people think about it. That, as they say in the hood, let it marinate.
Right? No, that's real. That's real. It would have been counterproductive even just right now when you said silence. I was like, ooh, yeah, that's good. I said, no, shut up.
Yeah.
Let it breathe, because you're right. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. This is awesome. Listen, we are so glad that you hung out with us today for 30 minutes on the Wednesday program, the Storytellers Show. As a matter of fact, as we talk today a little bit about how to improve your presence, about how to tell a different story, about how to make sure that your audience sees and hears and gets in their minds the story that you're trying to tell, when you do that online, when you do that on camera, that's important as well. So I want to invite you to join with us for the Confident on Camera Challenge. That starts this Sunday. It's a 5-day challenge, free challenge. Just join us, learn how to be confident on camera so that your story, that your message can be conveyed intentionally, that it can be conveyed in a way that transforms people, that moves them to action, because ultimately that's what you want to happen, right? It doesn't matter if you say something if nobody does anything after you say it. Right? So join us for the Confident on Camera Challenge. Head on over to confidentoncamerachallenge.com, sign up, register, and then hang with us for 5 days starting Sunday, May 2nd through Thursday, May 6th. Is that right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I just make sure. My math is a little bit suspect right now, so I'm just making sure we got
Executive presence, you got to know your numbers.
All right, y'all, listen. Yeah, listen, silence, listen, that was the word. All right, listen, we'll see y'all next week, Wednesday, for another episode of the Storytellers Show right here. Subscribe on RK3 TV, and we'll see ya.